Alright, peace and greetings, YouTubers. So welcome to another edition of In the News. Let's just jump right into it. I didn't really get a chance to watch the Billboard Music Awards in its entirety. I saw a few performances here and there, but I just wasn't interested. But you know, it is what it is. I did watch some of the performances. I saw some of the Alicia Keys performance. They were celebrating the 20th anniversary of her debut album, which is crazy because I'm like, that was 20 years ago? And it's crazy because I remember it. So I'm like, dang, I am getting older, okay. Because I was like, dang, 20 years ago, I was like, man, that's back when I was still wearing like the visor with the S-curl. Like that's like when everybody in my age bracket at that time, we all had the high top fades, but you S-curl the top. And it came in like this green box. I think they still sell it too. It's like this green S-curl box. And then you'd have like the blue, it was like a blue activator that you put in with the S-curl like day after day just to kind of keep it somewhat moisturized. And you had to find the medium of making sure it was moisturized, but it didn't look wet. You know what I mean? You didn't want it to look like the Jerry curls from the 80s. But yeah, I used to have that, and that's when everybody was wearing the Iversons, the sneakers. I didn't, of course. My dad didn't believe in paying more than $50 for shoes, so I was wearing Fila's in 2001. But that's okay. So yeah, Alicia performed. She did a little bit of Fallen. It was okay. And she did A Woman's Worth. Who else performed? I saw some of SZA and the Doja Cat performance. I didn't see all of it, but I caught the tail end of it. And then I saw some of Pink's performance. She did like a medley. They were honoring her that year. I wish she would have added a few more songs to the medley. I didn't hear a lot of songs that I recognized. I recognized her later stuff too, but she has such a large collection of music. I thought they would kind of mix it up a little bit more. But you know, hey, if you're being honored, you get to do what you want. But I tell you this, I knew she was going to start flying because that's the given. You know, as soon as it's time for Pink to perform, they got that harness ready and she's going up. So, you know, Pink was going to do Pink. The only reason I actually ended up watching any of it was because I saw Jimmy Jam tweet that Sounds of Blackness was going to be performing at Paisley Park and they were going to do Optimistic. And I was like, okay, I do want to see that. And so I saw that in its entirety. So that was pretty fun to watch. I did want them to really perform it with the live band because one, I think the drum riff on that song is it's such an addictive it just sounds so good. Like if you go back and just play that song, those drums are like just addictive. It's like euphoria to just sit and listen to the way that the drums are played on that, and it just has this live fresh sound, kind of like how I always gas up Brand New Heavies Never Stop. It's in that same kind of category. And so I was like, dang man, I wish they would have did it with all the music, but it was cool. They did it a cappella with, you know, little snaps and a little, you know, just keep the rhythm going, but they sounded amazing. And again, they kind of used it as a way to kind of push the narrative of just kind of like social responsibility and everything. So it was cool. And of course, Ann Nesby is still in really great voice. It's crazy because, you know, as people get older, your voice starts to have the wear and tear, and sometimes the power starts to fade. But Ann Nesby said, not I, said the cat. Absolutely not. So she was out there hitting all them notes, wasn't playing no games. All right. So that's all I saw from the Billboard Music Awards. But for those who actually sat and watched the whole thing, feel free to give your commentary in the comments. It's just that I'm not as current with a lot of the newer acts. That's one of the reasons why I slowed down doing even like the R&B is Dead series, because I don't keep up as much, so it's like I don't want to make another one of those until I really know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so that was Billboard Awards. And then for my fellow music heads, I'm sure many of you have seen this story about the new reality series coming to BET entitled BET Presents the Encore. Now, this is going to be a show that has a bunch of ex-members from different girl groups plus Nivea, and they're going to work together to work on pretty much a collaborative project. Some of the people in the lineup include Pam of Total, Irish and Lamisha from 702, Shamari from Black, Aubrey O'Day from Danity Kane. Even though at first when I saw that, I was like, I don't get how that's going to work, but I think it would make for great TV, so I changed my mind. Keely from 3LW, that's why I said it would work. Keely and Aubrey, I feel like they're about to butt heads the whole show. Felicia and Fallon from Cherish, and like we said, Nivea. And so the goal is, it said that they're going to work on an album and they're going to do choreography and rehearse together. And I'm like, boy, that's too many creative minds in one space. So this is going to be some great TV for me to watch. Even though I need to cut back because I'm watching too much TV as of late. But I just think 9 is a lot for a girl group or even a guy group, unless it's a band. If it's a band like a Earth, Wind & Fire or like a Tony from back in the day when they first started, yeah, it works then. But I'm like, 9? Because they're all going to be fighting over the solo and who going to get the ad-libs. I see it already. And just 9 is like, that's kind of like what them K-pop acts do when they got 829 people in the group. And I'm always like, well, how do y'all split the money? What are y'all all getting, $4 or what? But yeah, 9 people. Okay, that's like the mass choir at a storefront church. You know, when you go to one of those churches that has like 26 members and they say, let's hear it for the mass choir, and then it's 7 kids and 2 adults. That's what it's reminding me of. I don't know how this is going to work. Maybe like with the album, if it's something where maybe you have 2 folks from one group working on one song and maybe 3 people from another doing a different song or something. I can see that, you know, like a compilation disc. I can see that working. But if it's something where all 9 got to be on all the songs together, and it's really like an actual group, and they're going to go and perform and do things as a group and push themselves like a June's Diary or Destiny's Child or something like that. That's a lot of different personalities. I see it already. Even with the age gap, all right? I can see some of the younger ones wanting to rehearse at 2 in the morning, and Pam's going to be ready to go to bed at 9:45 and everything like that. One of the members from 702 is going to be like, I got a doctor's appointment. I'm supposed to be going. I got to run into more scans. I see it already. Like, it's going to be good TV. I can't wait to watch. But 9 is a lot. The only group I can think of with a lot of members that was like a girl group, because the girl groups don't ever last that long. Well, a lot of them. Some have made it, but a lot don't last that long. For some reason, Climax popped in my head, but even then, they didn't make it for too long, and they were fighting. I remember the keyboardists, when they split, keyboardists took the name and started touring around the road with some other new girls, and they were called Climax, and then the original members were mad, and there was a whole court battle, kind of like what happened with In Vogue as well, where Terry and Cindy, when the group splits, Terry and Cindy go with Rona, and they have a new In Vogue, and they have the ownership of the name, and the other two can't use the name, and so I know Maxine started her own group called like the Funky Divas, and so I'm just like, man, it's chaos. But this will be my void since Making the Band didn't happen. Remember, I think at the top of either 2020 or the end of 2019, I did a video talking about how, they had the auditions and everything for Making the Band. They were trying to make another R&B group, which I do think they need. There's not really any male R&B groups out right now. And so I was like, oh, this would be great. I was ready for that. But COVID-19 showed up, so that got canceled. And you know what was funny? One of my friends was like, oh, you should audition. And I was like, and do what? Chaperone? like after age 24, them reality shows look at you crazy with anything in regards to some kind of talent. If I was ever going to do a reality show, there was a show that used to come on, I think E. It was called Platinum Hit, but it was for songwriters. And they had to like write songs every episode, and they had the elimination rounds like that. I could do something like that. That's fun. But like a Making the Band, that's not going to work. I've passed that window of what they would look for. But well, it's funny. I don't think I'd do reality shows though anyway, because like I feel like if I ever audition for a reality show, they're gonna do their research and find this channel. And when they find this channel and see a lot of the content I talk about, they're gonna restructure the whole show and they're gonna set me up. It's gonna be me in the house with a bunch of racist folks. I see it already. And they're gonna make sure it's like 9 racist people that are all bigger than me, and I can't fight all of them at the same time. So I'm like, nope, I'm good. Then I'm gonna have to cheat. I'm gonna just go straight for the knees. That's what I've learned. Like when you're smaller framed and a little bit shorter, you just go for the knees and bring them down to your level and go for it. But we'll see how this unfolds. Anyway, moving on. And then for those of you on the East Coast and in the Midwest, I'm wondering how everybody is managing with the emergence of the cicadas, because they're kind of all over the place depending on where you live or depending on how many trees are in your area. And so initially, I wasn't really seeing that many of them at first. And then, I went to my friend's house the other day, and they live a little bit further out from the city. Like, they live in one of those areas where the air is crisp. The air is just clean, and they have all kind of trees and shrubbery, and, they got a huge yard. And so, we were out there just hanging out on the deck, just chilling, minding our business, enjoying our blackness. And then, literally, as the sun went down, and I forgot, like, they have the lights that go around the deck and everything. Look, the cicadas and all kind of bugs were attracted to the lights. So they all just started kind of, like, swarming in on the deck. I was like, all right, time to go inside. I'm not afraid of bugs or anything. Like, if you follow my podcast, I always talk about being that kid that had jars full of, like, lizards and spiders and all kind of stuff and snakes. But, when there's too many at the same time around, I'm like, all right, I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. Let's keep it moving. And so it was funny. I was watching the news, and they were talking about different recipes you can make for those who want to eat them, because in some countries it's a delicacy, so they're having all these different recipes. And the chef that was on the TV was like, oh yeah, it's just like a tree shrimp, it's just like a tree shrimp, it's gonna be a little gooey. I'm like, all right, then you gave me too many of the wrong details. I'm good. Plus, they got too many legs. I wouldn't want to eat them. It's kind of like, sometimes if I eat crawfish, if I stare at the crawfish too long, especially if I flip it over and I see all those legs, I'm like, all right, this is starting to look like a roach now. This is like a roach with a harder shell. I'm good. I'm going to take a break from these. And so I'm good. I'm going to let the birds enjoy the cicadas. They've been having a field day, just having a feast. Them birds been tearing them cicadas up. All right? But, cicadas, it seems like they just have a really crappy life cycle. And it's like they have no defense mechanisms. They're just big and slow. And just, it's like they're just set up to be eaten by everything else, which is probably why they mate in such huge numbers. But I just think they have a crappy life cycle. It's like you sit underground for all those years, and you finally emerge, and then you mate and you die. That's it. Like, literally, that's how I saw my first cicada, because they didn't really have them on the West Coast when I lived there. But when I moved here for undergrad, I was at, the pinning ceremony at Howard. And, they got all the freshmen out there on the yard, and the band's playing, and the cheerleaders are doing their cheerleading thing, and all the speeches. And somebody was doing a speech, and a dead one fell out of the tree right into my lap. And I had to kind of just play it cool, because I didn't want to do too much and embarrass myself because, again, nobody knows anybody. These are like first impressions, so it just landed in my lap. I was like, but no, I think that's a crappy life cycle just to die. Like, it's kind of like, sometimes I watch Animal Planet or Nat Geo before I go to bed, and, they always have the different, stories and stuff. And so I was watching one of the episodes, and it was like the 10 worst mating experiences with bugs. And so they had all these different bugs that had horrible ways to mate. And so they were talking about the praying mantis and how the female praying mantis actually eats the male praying mantis while they're mating. So they're just mating, and she's just chopping it, eating it. I was like, oh no, like I couldn't be the male praying mantis because I'm like, listen, I'm celibate, I'm good. I'm celibate, I'm not interested. No, I'm on a spiritual journey. I'm trying to do better for myself. I'm just trying to do different things. I just want to kind of climb a few trees, sit in the leaves, enjoy the sun, watch the sun go down. That's where I'm at right now. And then like I saw even the black widows, the black female widow, she kills the male as soon as they're finished. So it's kind of like, dang, that sucks too. Like the male has to literally hightail it out of there because when she snatch him up, it's over. I'm like, dang, that sucks. Because if I was the male too, I'd be like, wait a minute, hold on, wait. I'm not done. I got a few more tricks I'm about to show you. Like, you about to see something you ain't ever seen before. Like, get ready. Here we go. Wait. Hey, what's the rush? So you're not even gonna let me see my kids? Like, nope. So let me stop being silly. But yeah, the cicadas, I'm good. You're not gonna let the kids see their father? That's what we doing? Okay, see? All right, we're gonna have to go to Mari's show or something. But anyway, let's jump into some actual stories. So this next story, I'm not even gonna lie, I'm frustrated because mainly, had people paid attention to the warning signs that were there when people were saying something isn't right in the water, we wouldn't be here in 2021 talking about a documentary about a family of black siblings that were driven off the cliff by their adoptive white parents. And so I'm frustrated because you watched all of this unfold over time. So let's backtrack. I'm gonna work a little bit backwards on this. So we remember this picture, right? And so this is a picture that goes viral, but it was part of a series because there was a second picture that pretty much told the story of this picture, which was this picture. And so you see Devonte Hart holding a sign that says free hugs. At the time that this picture was taken, this was during a lot of the anti-police brutality protests. Mike Brown had just been killed, and I think at this point in time, it had already been decided that Darren Wilson was not going to be charged. So of course people are pissed off about it. And so you see this picture, and this picture ends up going viral because of the context of that picture. And again, it's that conversation of symbolism. It's one of the things that always happens in America. When you live in a racist country, one of the ways to always combat people who are saying things are still wrong in this country is somehow you attack the moral compass of those making the outcries about what's wrong. And you come down with some stupid watered down symbolism and say, oh, we just give hugs or just give love, because that's the issue. They don't recognize that this isn't about feelings. It's about the fact that when you're taking down something that's systemic, an entire system that's oppressing people collectively, all in the name of white supremacy, it's not about feelings. It's not about love. It's not about, you can't get to any of that until you fix the problem. This is why I always say, don't hop on the symbolism train until the work is done. The symbolism is supposed to be for after the fact, after everything has been fixed, and you're motivated to keep going and make sure this never happens again and anything like that. Or if you need the symbolism to motivate you to fix the problem, but the symbolism is never the fix. But in this country, one of the things that always happens is they go with all of these symbolic gestures to kind of warm everybody up. And what it does is it kills all the rage, it kills the fire that people have about certain things. And before you know it, everybody's like, oh, we're back to normal. This is one of the reasons why, like I said, even in the spring and summer of 2020, as soon as you started seeing a lot of police take a knee during some of these protests and everything like that, you saw people already ready to bring out the grill and do the electric slide, like everything was all done. And we fast forward to 2021, they still haven't put that George Floyd bill into legislation, right? Now ain't nothing getting done around here. But anyway, so going back to my main point, they paint this picture and it goes viral. They put it all over the place, and I was like, something isn't right with this one. I was like, something is not right. And it wasn't just me. There were so many people who felt the same way. A lot of like YouTube content creators and bloggers who make similar content were all saying the same thing, like something isn't right. And so then I discovered that this kid is adopted and he has 2 white women that are his parents. I was like, you know what? I can already tell that they pretty much propped this kid up there to go and do all that because they wanted a viral moment. Because one of the other things that happens in this country is people are obsessed with being a hero. Everybody wants to be a hero. And I think in the parents' mind, it was kind of like, oh yeah, let's have this symbolic moment that will go viral and bring peace to the world. But really in reality, it means we get to go on a media campaign and maybe Lifetime will come and give us a movie and so on and so forth. And we can say that we helped fight racism. It's kind of like, even in politics, where every time there's a white candidate that runs for office, for some reason people think it's a brownie point if they march with Martin Luther King. I'll never forget when Mitt Romney was running and somebody was like, it was Mitt Romney's dad that marched with Martin Luther King. Where was Obama's? I was like, what does that have to do with... First of all, I don't care what their parents did. I need to know what the policy is, but whatever. If y'all take that if you want to. It is what it is. But anyway, and so, you know, everybody's saying like something isn't right here. It's just, you can tell that they pretty much forced the kid to go up there and do the picture. Like, go up there and take that picture. We're going to have a moment. And so what they tried to do in the media is when he was crying, the narrative was he was just so moving and just wanted everybody to get along and just be loved. If we can just come together as Americans. And that's literally the narrative that they pushed out there. And for me, I was like, no, this kid looks terrified. And I'm going to tell you why he's terrified. Because he's had to be out there all day. And every time he saw somebody black go up to those police officers, they probably got knocked down with a club or pepper sprayed or beat down or stumped out or arrested or the tear gas came out or the dog came out. And so, yeah, he's terrified because this is a chaotic scene. This is not a place where you bring children and then expect them to sit out there all day and then you force them to go out there and push a sign. And so I had done a YouTube video mainly around... It was when Kendall Jenner, they had that stupid Pepsi commercial where, you know, she gave the cop the Pepsi and everybody was free. Yeah. And so I was critiquing that and I brought his situation up. And then one of the friends of the two parents actually responded. Now, I talked about this on the live, but I couldn't find the comment at the time. But I dug through all of these videos and comments and I found them. So I just want you to listen to the context of this because it paints a picture of pretty much everything I'm talking about. So Miss Sarah Taylor says, while I agree with you fully on your views regarding the Pepsi commercial, I'm saddened. Here we go. We put your feelings in it. Again, we're having a systemic conversation. We want to bring feelings in the first sentence. I'm saddened to hear my friends mentioned in the end of this video. I do not like your comments on Devonte Hart or his family. You are right. He was scared to hug that police officer. However, he was not forced to do so. I am lucky to have met this sweet young boy. Here's the other thing. They always do this thing where when they're trying to make you feel guilty for calling them out on some foolery, then they bring down like the overcompensated compassion, the sweet young boy. So when they got to describe the black children, it's just not like I was happy to meet the young kid. Now, sweet young boy. All right, okay, I see what you're doing here, but whatever. Anyway, sweet young boy, and worked with one of his mothers for many years. This boy is a simple hugger. When I met him, way before this photo, instead of being a shy child or just saying hi, he about knocked me over with the biggest hug. He chose to hold that sign he chose to hold that sign he made and has made many times before for many different events. And so the issue I have with that as well is like, you can't equate a kid meeting you for the first time and hugging you with a kid wanting to go and hug some police that he just watched stump out everybody. They're not equatable, so let's not even act like it's the same kind of energy, because if that's the case, if he was just so moved by hugging people, he should have been crying when he hugged you too. Anyway, where am I at? He chose to hug this officer, who is a human. Here we go, bringing feelings again. We want to humanize those that are doing the oppressing. They're doing the work of the oppressive system, and they're getting paid to do it. And so we're going to humanize them. So he is a human that did nothing to this child but say, hello, I like your sign. He told his mom he was scared of the police, but that he just wanted to hug this person who commented on his sign. The media took this photo and blew it up, made it into a political statement, and even harassed the family for months trying to get interviews with this child. No, it wasn't a harass, because that's the kind of information that they wanted. That's the energy they wanted to have. It wasn't them being harassed. They enjoyed all of this, because I told you, people in this country are obsessed with being heroes. All right, that's why we have so many white savior movies. I remember his mother coming to work late because she couldn't get out of her driveway due to people trying to take photos of Devonte Hart or his family. These are two good parents who stand up for equality in every aspect, and their kids share that passion. This is not white women forcing their adopted black child to pose with police. And then that leads us to the next part, where it's discovered that they're being abused in this household. They're not being fed adequate amounts of food. They're pretty much being starved. The kids are all underweight, all of them. It's one thing when it's one child, because, you know, sometimes there's a kid, they just take a little bit longer to develop, but when it's all of them, and it wouldn't make sense because, again, these are two white women that actually have a decent amount of money and live in a decent sized home and have decent careers, so there's no conversation about there being a lack of food. They don't live in a food desert. They're not hurting for money. There's no reason why the kids should be starving. And so it plays a role into the next part, which is all of the kids are underperforming at school, which correlates back to that first part. The research already shows there's a correlation with children's performance in academia and how much they've eaten. If they're not getting adequate food, if they're not getting adequate nutrition, it plays a role into how they pick up things in school. It plays a role into their cognitive learning. It also plays a role into behavior. And also, in addition to not just getting food, anything, any kind of abuse, whether it's psychological, whether it's physical, sexual, it all plays a role into how the children will perform in school. So then that was the next sign. And then there's another sign where neighbors are calling 911 saying something ain't right over there at that house on the corner. There's some stuff going on. I heard some noises the other day. And so nothing is still really happening. You have one of the girls, which was one of his siblings, because Devonte was adopted with all of his siblings, so it's a handful of them. And so, the little girl's telling the people at school, mommy gave me an owie. So clearly the kids are being abused. And so they actually get pulled out of the school over time. The moms just pull all the kids out of school. And so all the signs were there. That's why when Miss Sarah Taylor was talking about, oh no, he just almost knocked me down to give me a hug. I'm like, ma'am, children don't just randomly hug strangers. I don't care if it's your mom or dad's friend. They're going to look at you like no. And so to me, that comes off as you'd see this kid holding this free hug sign all the time at these events because that's the only way he's going to get to eat today. If the children are being starved, clearly they're doing something where it's like, oh no, you want to eat today or you want to get an adequate amount, go over there, hold this sign. Go over there, hug that cop. Hug my random friend you've never seen before that you're just going to run and give a super, super tight hug to the very first time you've seen them. When is the last time you've seen a child go and hug somebody that they don't know, like it's a great-great-grandmother that they haven't seen in 20 years? Yeah, right. And so, and I'm saying that as somebody that works with kids. I know that first day I started at that job and them kids got off that bus, they all looked at me like, and who you supposed to be? And so, yeah, and so it's like, if she would have paid attention, Miss Sarah, it's like clearly those are the signs. Because one of the things too, like, you start starving people long enough and everything else, it kind of goes into that same conversation of like how you see cults become, bigger, or how people get so devoted to cults, or cults. You kind of take away something that they need and they become interdependent on whoever the authoritative figure is. And then there's almost like an allegiance to what it is that authoritative figure wants, needs, or what it is that they're saying. And so in order to continue to at least succeed or have some element of normalcy, you start to do whatever you're told in order to get simple things like food or clothing or housing, or sometimes for some people it's some kind of spiritual connection or something to make them feel empowered. That's how you see cults pretty much grow super large. But it's like, man, all the signs were right there and it's like nothing. And then we fast forward and look, everybody's dead. The two moms drove off the cliff with all the kids in the car and they couldn't even find all the bodies. It was so bad. And so it's just like, man, and that explains, it's like no wonder why the boy was out there holding the sign, because look, I'm so frustrated every time I think about it. And again, like, it's that conversation of just the obsession with wanting to be a hero. Because again, like, even with her painting this narrative, I'm talking about the Sarah friend, oh, I'm hurt, I'm disappointed. You talking about my friends, oh, these are loving people, oh, they have so much love in their heart. He just wanted to hug everybody. He loves to do this at all kind of events. Kids want to play outside. They want to go outside and play. They don't want to go to protest and watch people get tear gassed and hold a sign talking about free hugs. No, not unless they've been conditioned to go and do something like that. And again, you keep starving the kids and you're abusing them, you can condition them to do whatever it is you want them to do, because they recognize the reward that they're getting, which really is not the reward, it's really just the necessity, is by them doing what is told. And so yeah, go out there and hold that sign. Go out there and hug those random people. And it's again, that random idea of just wanting to be a hero. It reminds me of this one time. There's a DJ out here, DJ One Love Muhammad, that has a show called The Love Lounge, and they used to tape the show at B Cafe over on 13th Street for those in DC, but B Cafe is gone now. But they used to do live tapings where, people in the community would come together and just talk about things that were happening. You just pass the mic and share your 2 cents. And so something terrible, of course, happened in the country at that time. I can't remember what it was, but it was something where everybody was frustrated. So everybody who had the mic was just going in like, oh, we need to hold these politicians accountable, and this councilman didn't do this, and so on and so forth, and we're seeing a pattern. We need to do something, and this is the, this food bank here is going to be doing this, and this is what you can do, and this is what you can do, and go to this website, and all of that, and everybody's just going in. And there were also 2 white women that were in the crowd. And so one of the white women, like, she raises her hand to get the mic, and she's like, there's one thing I want to say, and I want everybody to remember this. We are all American. Thank you. And then I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Again, that conversation of symbolism. What does that do for the actual problem at hand? Like, there was something structural that was taking place where there needed to be actual legislation to change things. And so telling people we are all American, what does that do for somebody? We know that. That's why we're always talking our trash and going off about something, because y'all done painted this picture of, oh, land of the free and home of the brave and all this other stuff, and this is the place to go and make it. And ain't nobody making it except for white people in this country like that collectively. Before y'all jump in here and try to say, oh no, I'm doing well, what I'm saying is systemically, they're the only people in this country that don't have something working against them. Everybody else has they get into their success in spite of a system that's in place. But the problem is people shouldn't have to get to anything in spite of a system. Get rid of the system. That's the argument. And so again, I'm looking at her like, what are we supposed to do with that? But she really thought she did something. She felt like, I don't know, after she said that, we were all supposed to just snap out of it. Like, yeah, we are all American. Yeah. Like, what? I can't, man. So the documentary, like I said, it's on Discovery Plus. I'm talking all this trash now. I'm probably going to watch it and get even more enraged, but it's just like, it didn't have to get to this point. Had people just paid attention to the signs. And the fact that people were calling things out and saying something wasn't right in the water before it even got to that. And I'm not just talking about like other bloggers and stuff, but like I'm talking about people calling 911 and people recognizing signs of abuse, and then look, nothing got done. Because again, you know, sometimes even that system, when you're talking about adoption and childcare, it's biased towards wealthy white families. Especially if they're taking in black families or families that are coming from different, you know, ethnic minority groups and everything like that. Oh yeah, this is great, this is amazing. Because again, the savior complex, it's an obsessive thing in this country. It's one of the things you can kind of utilize to counterbalance the arguments against white supremacy. You know, oh, this country can't be racist because look at this family. These women have adopted 4 or 5 black children. It can't be. That's all in your mind. You know, you need to think. You need to think with your heart. Think with your heart. Anyway, moving on. And then this police cover-up of the murder of Ronald Greene. Now this one here, when I tell you Friday, I was irate for most of the day. It's just like the details are so triggering, and it's pretty much, the police killed this man, right? And then they tell the family, oh, he died in a car accident, his car hit a tree. And then the family's kind of like, something ain't right in the water. Wait a minute, hold on. Because again, the body doesn't even align with the injuries that would have come from that kind of accident. And so the body cam footage comes out. And it's literally one of the worst things you can possibly see. I was kind of pissed that the news kept kind of showing it. I understand we have to keep the stories alive, but sometimes it's like, look, y'all gotta give me a warning. Like, they had a little too much that they were showing. I was like, I'm not feeling this at all. But it's like, you know, mind you, the guy is trying to like plead and, oh, I'm your brother, and listen, I'm sorry, there's no anything. And no, they beat this man down, they stumping him out, they're punching him, he's getting tased. They literally shackle his feet and drag him. And then even when he gets to the coroner and they're like, oh yeah, he died from a car accident, he still has the taser prongs in his back. They just kept tasing him. And at that point, he had already been restrained. He just kept going. And he literally killed this man. They're pissed off about the blood getting on their outfits. They're bragging about it. They're calling them all kind of MFers and everything else like that. Like, they literally went out for blood. And this is why people keep saying this is not some crap that you can reform. Okay? This is embedded in the veins and in the blood of this entire policing system because it's rooted in racism. It's rooted in anti-blackness. It's rooted in white supremacy. And it's coddled by a system that allows it to happen over and over and over again. That's why they can sit here and hide body cam footage for 2 years. A family is literally grieving, and they don't even get the honest truth of what happened to their family member. And when they finally find out, it's the most gruesome discovery, and they got to find out with the rest of the world. This is what we're talking about. And then even when you talk about the punishments that came, one officer was suspended for 50 hours. 50 hours. I think radio show hosts get suspended longer than that when they piss off somebody on the radio as far as the advertisers. Are you serious? One of the police officers, I believe, is now dead. Karma came to him a different way. And then the other one got fired. But I'm like, no, y'all need to rack up the charges now. Absolutely right now. Right now. This is not, firing ain't enough. You know what I mean? And this is why I keep saying that, at least with the policing, there has to be an agency independent of the policing system, the judicial system, even the prison industrial complex, and no ties to politics or politicians or PACs or any of those groups or any kind of movements. A separate agency that oversees that, and then they have their own jurisdiction to handle police misconduct. Because it's never going to be fixed if you allow the police to correct themselves. It's like, we investigated ourselves and we found we did nothing wrong. And you keep seeing this same cycle over and over and over, because Roland Greene is not the only person where the police have killed him and lied about what happened. Even with some of the other, I guess you could say, high profile killings. I don't even like using that term. But same thing. Eric Garner, they tried to push the narrative, oh, he was just in bad shape and had asthma. That's what killed him. He shouldn't have been so big. They did that with George Floyd. Okay, let's paint him out to be a crackhead and he was on drugs and his body he had a heart attack. But even when you talk about a lot of other people outside of some of the names that we hear about all the time, there's so many people who've been killed or abused or disabled by the police, and they lied on the report and said, oh yeah, this happened. He fell off the second floor. Yeah, that's what happened. He fell through the roof on something. Oh, he broke his neck somehow. Yeah, they got story after story, and it's just like, it's foolery. And even with the body cams, I'm always like, I don't understand why the police even get the luxury to hold on to body cam footage and not release it when there's time for investigations. I feel like body cam footage should go to a central database, and boom, if the family says we'd like to inquire about why our family member is dead, we want to see the footage, boom, it shouldn't even be a thing. Like that situation in North Carolina with Andrew Brown, where again you have an individual that is shot and killed by police, and the body cam footage is not released because the state of North Carolina already has a stipulation where it's a little bit harder to get the body cam footage because again they talk about the rights of the police officers, and I'm like, well, that defeats the purpose. The purpose of the body cams was to pretty much show accountability, and if the police haven't done anything wrong, release the footage. And so they released this footage. You see a snippet of what really happened because there's a few hours worth of footage. We only saw like 20, 30 or 40 seconds, and then that footage is already questionable, but then you watch the DA break his neck to go up there and do that press conference and paint this whole scenario where he spends 30 minutes talking about how this man had a criminal past and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. Twist the narrative and say, oh, he was using the car as a weapon. Where, when you see the clip, the police are to the side of the car unless the car can move sideways and hit the police that way. I don't know what you're talking about. They shoot into the car, a man gets shot in the back of the head, and they try to say, oh, no, he was a threat. And I'm like, listen, no, he was fleeing because you're shooting into his car. You start shooting in my car, I'm driving off too. Like, what the heck? And so it's just like, there's so many, it's too much. Even the situation with the guy where the police pull him over, they see the urn in the back of the car. This man's 2-year-old daughter is dead. Her ashes are in the urn. They want to dig through the ashes and make sure it's not meth. Like, this is the stuff that I'm talking about. You can't reform that. That isn't something you can reform. And so it's just like, so much sometimes. It's one of the reasons why I know you guys sometimes get mad because sometimes I take breaks from videos. I might go more than a week, but sometimes I just need a day because I'm like, you know what? It's a lot. Anyway, moving on. For this last portion, by the way, as you can tell, it's another day. I got sleepy. I was like, let me just go to bed. My eyes started getting like super red in those last 2 segments. And sometimes when you're like speaking directly to a camera for a certain amount of time, your eyes like get dry and stuff. So I was like, let me go to bed. But I did want to take some time to talk about the conversation around critical race theory. We talked about it a little bit on the last video, but I want to dig a little bit deeper. And it's so funny because, to be honest, it's not even really a thing. They pretty much already put it into a term to kind of make it propaganda to fight against and push this idea of there's a war against America. And so that's what they're doing right now. And so you're seeing people go and put legislation into place to make sure that, these things aren't taught in the schools. And you're seeing people get silenced. You're seeing people show up at school board meetings in tears because they don't want their children to learn about America's history the way that it should be taught, because they want it to still be the whimsical, buttery, we are all one happy utopia, and the terrible things that happened weren't even that bad kind of rhetoric. And so I did want to read a few things and then we'll talk. So it states, Republicans in the Texas House passed a bill Tuesday that effectively bans public school teachers from talking about racism, white supremacy, or current news events. The bill, which is being fast-tracked to Republican Governor Greg Abbott to sign into law, states that social studies and civics teachers aren't allowed to discuss the concept that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex, or the idea that an individual, by virtue of the individual's race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. It also states that social studies and civics teachers may not be compelled to discuss current events or widely debated and currently controversial issues of public policy or social affairs as part of a course. The legislation, which passed 79-65, almost entirely along party lines, doesn't explicitly use the word ban, but might as well. The bill is written in a clever way, said Democratic State Rep. James Tallarico, a voice critic of the bill. You can talk about race in the classroom, but you can't talk about privilege or white supremacy. It doesn't outright ban talking about race, but the idea is to put in landmines so any conversation about race in the classroom would be impossible. And so, like I've been saying for a long time, what's been happening, especially in the United States, is you're starting to see a lot of people really just kind of question things. People aren't really receiving and accepting what has been taught to us collectively, especially through K-12 education. People are like, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. And so you've seen people go out of their way to do research, and you've seen things like the 1619 Project come out. You've seen the conversation start to shift. You've seen more diversity trainings or racial sensitivity, all kind of different things that are pretty much saying, okay, maybe we kind of just scratched the surface on a lot of the flaws that this country has collectively. And so, boom, we really need to go a little bit deeper. Let's talk about why things are the way they are. Because again, when you have the conversation, especially around racism and anti-blackness, it's not just about feelings. It's about policy. It's about structure. It's about laws, covenants, ordinances, articles, all of that. And then not only that, but just even the residual effects of those policies and why people are in the predicaments that they're in today. And so for the longest, People, again, were always given this little brushed over, 2-word sentence explanation of everything. And so it was always painted as if people aren't doing well in this country, it's all on them. There's no policy that kind of put them in a position to be in what it is that they're in. None of that is a thing. It's all a choice, and they push the whole narrative of working hard and the bootstrap mentality. And, they'll go and get the story of the immigrant that came from Portugal and their dad came to America with 3 cents and he built a multi-million-dollar corporation and look how he made it. So what's your excuse? And they don't talk about the fact that even when you're talking about bank loans and starting businesses and everything else, there were discriminatory practices when it came to getting contracts and laws and LLC, everything, like layer after layer. But anyway, so what you're seeing now is there's a challenge to the status quo. And you're seeing a lot of fear because here's the thing. We currently live in a system of anti-blackness, a system of racism, white supremacy. But the way that a system stays into play is you have to continue to have buy-in from the up-and-coming generations because that system will still be here because of the laws that have been enacted. However, you need enough buy-in from the generations that follow in order to keep that system into play, to keep that system in power, and not just in power, but with the same amount of power. So you constantly have to find ways to keep people as what I would say like in a box or in a bubble or keep people almost obedient. And so what they've done in the past and what they're still trying to do now is it's the idea of American exceptionalism through a lens of whiteness. So you pretty much paint this country to be the best of the best at everything, and we had the best technology, the best innovations, and this is what they taught in the schools. We were always taught, especially when you talk about the industrial industry. We were just, first class, top tier at everything, but it's painted through a lens of this was all because of white innovativeness. White Americans, the top. Now, we give so much to Albert Einstein and all of them and Thomas Edison. And, so you push all these people out there and you paint this narrative that we were just the moral compass of the world. Even when you talk about the wars, and it doesn't matter how many people we blew up or destroyed, it was because we were giving democracy to the rest of the world. And not only that, when we blow up countries, we even rebuild them. We're not going to have the conversation of the fact that when we go and rebuild anything in another country after we've blown it up, it usually has something to do with American interests. It has something to do that will eventually advance the American economy, but never mind that. It's in the goodness of our hearts. Yeah, we blew up your whole city and killed all your kids and stuff, but we're going to build you a KFC. And so, you have that idea that takes place. So again, the idea of American exceptionalism. And so that's what you've seen pushed forward over and over and over. And the thing about it too is it's almost like a wall or a cape that you use anytime somebody challenges the status quo, challenges the history of America. You water it down with American exceptionalism, and then you also push the narrative of, oh well, if you don't agree, you hate America, you're anti-American, you're communist, a tyrannist, socialist. They got all the terms, all the names, and everything else like that. And so the next thing they also do to make sure that people don't challenge the status quo and that they buy into this idea of American exceptionalism and continue to be happy with the way things are and not challenge anything is you water down the atrocities, because there are some atrocities you just can't really skip over. So you find ways to water them down to make them not seem as bad. I always talk about us dropping the nuclear bombs. If you go back to K-12 education, especially for those who went to school in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, the way that we were taught about the nuclear bombs were, yeah, we dropped the bomb and it killed like 150,000 people in one city and 200,000 in another, and a few million more died from cancer and everything else afterwards. But I mean, the bombs that we had were, the first of the first. No one had what we had. And it was a wake-up call to the rest of the world not to mess with America. And it showed the greatness of our American military. And it showed the greatness of our American military industrial complex. And it just showed that we had done so much in the world, was now going to understand that we're going to make the rules around here and we're going to spread democracy to the rest of the world. And so then that's how you're taught that, this country goes and kills a bunch of civilians, hundreds of thousands, like in a snap of a finger. And so that's kind of like what you're taught. But I wanted to go a little bit further, because even when we talk along the lines of race and we talk along the lines of even like things like slavery. So I was recently digging through and I found the book. It was called History of Georgia. This is the textbook that was used in the state of Georgia between like the 50s, 60s, early 70s. I just want you to pay attention to this passage that I'm going to read, all right? Now, mind you, this is about slavery in America. This was the black history that was being taught at the time. White and Negro children played together, and many of the missus' children were mothered by a colored mammy. Often, whites and blacks were thus even closer as friends. The master often had a barbecue or a picnic for his slaves. They had a great frolic. Even while working in the cotton fields, they sang songs. The beat of the music and the richness of their voices made work seem light. Wasn't that just beautiful? wasn't that just great? It's just a grand old time. It's only slavery, but we're going to make it seem like it was just a wonderful time. I mean, those that were enslaved, they enjoyed working for us. I mean, they would sing, the songs just gave them rhythm, and it just gave them motivation to just keep going and pushing harder, because that's the American way. And so, yes, we know you have calluses on your fingers from picking cotton all day, but come on down, we're going to have a frolic. Go on and show us how you play that fiddle. He's one of the greatest at the fiddle. Yeah, he's going to play a little bit. He got a little bit of blood on the fiddle from the last time that hand got cut open, just too much work, but it's going to be great. It's going to sound amazing. We're going to dance. It's going to be a great old time. And so they painted it all to just be so whimsical. Now, as we got into the 70s, that kind of style of teaching and that approach at history got challenged, and they kind of shifted it around a little bit more. And by the time you get into the 80s, then the history curriculum's kind of shifted from like a slavery to Oprah in 20 pages. And if you think about it, for those who went to K-12 education, especially in public school, between the 1980s and the early 2000s, your Black history section of your history book always had a happy ending. Every single time. So yeah, it starts with slavery and atrocities of Jim Crow, but it's going to end with Martin Luther King dying, America magically getting a heart because he was killed, and all of a sudden racism disappeared. And now look at the examples of how Black people have made strides. And then they fill it with a bunch of celebrities and public figures, which are the exceptions to living under a system of racism. But, they'll throw Barack Obama in there, they'll throw in Oprah, I don't know, Beyonce, Serena Williams, some people that are great public figures, and that's supposed to be the justification as to why things happened in the past, because now everything is all good. Black people are doing great. And so that's what the history books have been. Never challenged anything. And so it didn't really answer questions. And it pretty much, you keep generations of people in this bubble of stupidity when it comes to race. And so now when you have people that go and try to challenge things, people automatically refer back to how they remember race being taught to them in K-12, or how society matriculates through conversations of race, where we only lightly scratch the surface. We don't shake the table too much. We don't do anything because, again, a lot of times, unfortunately, when you really start digging into those hard truths, it makes a lot of people look terrible. And for a lot of white Americans, they don't want to feel attacked. And my thing is like, listen, if approaching history from a lane of truth or exposing things feels like a personal attack, I'm sorry, that just means your history sucks. I don't know what you want me to do about it. Talk to your ancestors about it when your time comes to kick the bucket. I don't know what you want me to do. And so, yeah, that's where we're at. And so it's just interesting, because now what you're seeing is, now there's this conversation of making it seem like you're attacking America when you challenge things. Because remember, we were just running out here parading, talking about everything was post-racial just 5 or 6 years ago. I'll never forget having this channel some years back, and I was literally having these same conversations. And back then, I think I had a little bit more diplomacy with my delivery, and people used to just eat me up on this channel like, oh my God, racism does not exist. It only exists when you bring it up. And Martin Luther King had a dream, and you keep waking him up, and so on and so forth. And Michael Jackson had a song called Man in the Mirror, and maybe you should look in the mirror at your actions. And these people used to just go in on me all the time. And so it's funny, because now here we are, having the same conversations, and I think I'm not as filtered anymore. And at this point, I really start digging stuff out, and it's like I don't even get the same kickback anymore, because now it's like you can't even lie about it and deny that what we're seeing is a system that's in play. You can't even deny it anymore. And so notice, you haven't really heard the term post-racial be used anymore. It just like disappeared. It was something that was like thrown all around the media all the time for all of especially when Barack got in. The moment he got in, they wanted to paint this whole picture of everything was all fixed now and everything is all even. And then again, they turned it into symbolism. It's kind of like Mitch McConnell saying, when you have the conversations of reparations, he said, Barack Obama was reparations. I think we don't need to do reparations. Barack Obama he was reparations. This is where we're at. And so now, when you get into these conversations and you have the idea of critical race theory or anything that challenges the status quo or digs into the history or brings a true history and highlights things that were never really taught to the masses, things that were hidden, files that were, finally being unsealed. Like even the idea of something like Tulsa, Oklahoma, that never became a part of a national conversation until about 15, 20 years ago. For all of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, it was not really a part of the conversation. I kind of kept that under the radar. And so, now what happens is when you do those different things, when you dig into history, when you pull up facts, or you highlight the fact that some of these people who are the founding fathers were terrible people paint it as an attack on America. Because again, that goes back to that American exceptionalism bubble. It goes right back to that reference. It's like reflex. You start challenging America. You must hate America. You must hate it here. And again, it's funny because like I said, the way that they taught everything, just especially for my generation and the generation before, it was all this wonderful whimsical thing. Because even something like slavery, you hear so many people say, oh, it wasn't even that bad. They were given adequate food, they were given housing, they were taught English. Because what they ended up doing is they painted the idea that the continent of Africa was just so horrible. They were just beastly over there, just feral, random people. They didn't have clothes on, and we saved them. We brought them here and gave them a better life. They can have all of this. all of this, and so that's where we're at. And so with all of this, there's almost like a pattern in how it works, because the next step is, when people still don't want to accept any of that, the next step is punishment, and it comes in layers. One of the layers is start getting rid of any kind of training that exists. So you saw the previous administration pretty much say no racial sensitivity training in any kind of federal government institution. All right, no diversity inclusion kind of none of that, because that goes against American exceptionalism. It's against the founding fathers. It's anti-white. You just saw anti-white was trending the other day on Twitter too. I thought that was hilarious. It's anti-white. I'm like, yeah, please. All right. And then the next step, if it's not that, okay, well, let's also pull funding. No institution is going to teach anything that challenges, the status quo, that goes against the American fathers. Something like that 1619 project better not be taught in any colleges or any schools, or we're pulling funding. That was another thing that happened with the previous administration as well. Let's pull funding, and so on and so forth. And don't worry, this is just not to attack that administration, because you're still seeing the same pattern play into a role. There's nothing like watching Tim Scott and Kamala both go on TV and say that this is not a racist country. So again, there's layers to all of this. It's a bigger system that just continues to play and roll in this little circle. And then if it's a conversation of even pulling funding, if that's not it, the next step is you silence people. Now you're seeing all these people in academia, especially on a collegiate level or on college level, you're starting to see them get silenced or not get tenure. You saw what they tried to do with Cornel West. You see what they're doing to the woman that pretty much created the 1619 project. And it's funny because she's a Pulitzer Prize winning author and journalist, and literally the school that she's trying to get tenure at is the school she attended, and the school told her, well, you didn't really attend an institution that specializes in that, so we just can't put you on. I was like, okay. So the next step is you silence people. That's how YouTube works. You demonetize people who call out things as they see it. So you see a lot of YouTube content creators that tend to talk about race and everything else like that. You see them kind of disappear, or you see YouTube yank their videos down. Okay, so you see that happen. The next step is you go into education from the K through 12 institutions and from the K through 12 element, because again, that's where most of our children are being educated. So that's why you're seeing this happen now on the state levels, where they're telling the schools, don't even think about it. Before you even think about it, no. So not only can you not talk about racism in the past, and we don't even want you talking about current world events. Why? Because most likely they're going to correlate and tie back to the element of racism anyway, and then you're going to have to dig deeper. So let's just end all of that. So no conversations on current events or any debatable topics, no racism. I'm like, well, what's the point of having like mock trial and debate teams at the schools if they can't talk about anything? This is how you make great leaders, when people are in a position where they're allowed to think and question things and not take everything at face value just because it's presented to them as truth. And so you see that happen. And then of course, the next step is violence. That's the next step. That's one of the reasons why it's funny in schools, they teach about Hitler all day. Hitler's gonna be that, he's the go-to for everything. But I do wish schools would kind of teach more about the other, what you would say, fascist or white nationalist leaders all around America, because what happens is you start to see a pattern. So again, you see like Mussolini comes into power because again, Italy decided they wanted to have a fascist moment where all of a sudden they wanted to be racist. Okay, so they had a moment. Portugal had a moment. Spain had a moment. Spain was, Lord, that dang Franco. And when you talk about the bombing of Guernica, so like Guernica was like this area in Spain where the people revolted. They were like, we don't want to be a part of this foolery that you're trying to, instill in this country. Absolutely not. So he was like, all right, I'll show you. Hey, Germany, can I borrow your Air Force? Ours is still being developed, but can we borrow your Air Force? I need to bomb a few of my citizens. So he let Germany literally come in and bomb his own country, specifically Guernica, and kill all those people. And so go and kind of look up the details of the Spanish Civil War from, I think that was 1936. Or Leopold, who killed twice as many people as Hitler. This is why even in Europe, you still have the festivals with the chocolate hand, where you had all of those enslaved people in the Congo literally get their hands chopped off when they didn't meet the requirements of what it is they needed to do when it came to being enslaved and coming up with product for Leopold. And they painted it as, oh, he was this great missionary that went to go and teach Catholicism all around the world. He went and killed all the people. And so you notice that they don't teach all of those people. And I think they only kind of keep it to just Hitler, mainly because if you start highlighting that there's so many of them, you start to see a pattern. And then the next thing you're going to do is start looking at the United States and start looking at a lot of the presidents. Even some of the greatest presidents that people love to gas up, whether it's FDR or Woodrow Wilson, some of them were the most racist presidents on the planet. But they've been presented in this light as being the greatest. Oh, FDR had done all these great programs for the people. Yeah, white people, everybody else was left out. Okay? We weren't a part of the New Deal. And so there's just layers and layers and layers. But so this is why I always say you should not expect the schools to only teach your children. Like, in order to really understand things as the way they should be, you have to almost do your own research. You have to kind of go above and beyond and dig deeper, because the schools aren't going to do it. And now you have your own government, state and local, and soon to be federal, hounding down, trying to keep people in that American exceptionalism bubble, because you have to continue, like I said, you have to keep that same buy-in to the idea of American exceptionalism in order to keep that current system in power. You have to have enough people represented to support that. And they support it through how they vote, through what it is that they support, through how they carry things, through how they see themselves in the workplace, through how they carry themselves in the workplace, through how they implement policy, whether it be housing, education, food, so on and so forth. And so there are layers to all of this. So again, you're not crazy if you think that the United States seems to be getting worse and worse by the day. No, it is. They're trying to hold on to power. And so now you're just grasping for anything, reaching for straw, like anything, throwing anything at the wall that will work. And so anybody at this point who's challenging what's been happening in the United States, whether it's talking about police brutality or housing discrimination or racism or anything else like that, you're painted as hating America, which I'm like, at this point, why should I love America? What is that? I'm like, okay. What do you want me to do about it? This is what y'all laid out. You want me to be happy with what's been given and what's been put out here and what's been taken away? Please. Anyway, that's all. Also, rest in peace, Paul Mooney. That was, he was 79. Father Time comes and does his thing. But it's weird because, there's some people who I almost put them in like a time capsule. In my head, they're always the same age. So a few months back, I think it would have been Luther Vandross. It would have been his 70th birthday. And in my head, he's still like 55. In my head, Patti LaBelle, even though she's still here, in my head, Patti LaBelle is still 60. Same with Gladys. Same with Shaka. All of them I kind of have in this certain bucket. So I was like, dang, I didn't realize Paul Mooney was 79. But I always respected Paul Mooney because, again, he was unapologetic and didn't care. No filter. You can't cancel him because at this point, he wasn't looking for the validation from people that had the power to cancel anyway. So he said, it is what it is. You don't like me. Too bad. And so, I always have a respect for people who aren't afraid to challenge the status quo. But, anyway, long week, crazy week. Hopefully you all are staying sane and staying safe. But anyway, share your 2 cents. I'm out. Subscribe.
A bigger car splashes, oh no, you got mud on your clothes. Now you're trekking the roads, trying to make it home to change before you clock in and go to the job where you're disrespected from all your peers. Smartest in the room but never climb because of their peers. Watching all the mediocrity and title promotions. HR flags another email, they don't like how you wrote it. Now a mediation, conversation, improvement plan. Then expect you at the potluck with the folks you can't stand. You got a dream but no dollar cause you're paying the rent. Spend the evenings on your craft, missing social events. In your downtime you're catching up on all of your sleep. Getting ready for another round of cycle repeats.
I can't stop my jaded blue. I can't stop my jaded. I can't stop my jaded. I can't stop my jaded view. I can't stop my jaded blue. I can't stop my jaded. I can't stop my jaded. And through